In the Costal Cowl, I have little beads at the ends of the points on the bind off, and I just wanted to do a quick tutorial to show you how I got the beads on there. Often when I bead, I pre-string the beads onto the yarn. In this case, the beads were not pre-strung, and I added them on as I got to each stitch that needed a bead. So what you're going to do is work up to the spot where you need to add a bead. So in this case, I bound off a certain number of stitches. And then what you're going to do is get a crochet hook that will fit inside of a bead. So this is a very small crochet hook, and this is a huge bead actually. This is chunky weight yarn I'm demonstrating on, so you can imagine you need a much smaller bead, a much smaller hook for smaller beads. So once you've got your bead right on that hook, you're going to put the yarn onto the hook and hold that yarn on the hook as you pull the loop, the stitch, through the bead. So now my bead is sitting right on that stitch. And then you proceed with the next directions. In the case of the Costal Cowl, I ask you to yarn over and then bind off the yarn over. And that gives the section with the bead, that little point, an extra little bump, an extra little oomph for the bead to sit on. All right, and then you'll knit a few more, bind off a few more, and I'll show you another bead. So here we go. I can just take that right off the needle, hold it right there. I've got my bead. I'm putting it onto my hook, grabbing the yarn, the stitch rather, onto my hook, and pulling the bead over it. It can be a little tricky sometimes. I'm holding the yarn a little tight in my left hand as I pull that hook through. Then I replace the stitch on the right needle. In this case, I'm yarning over and then binding off the yarn over and then proceeding again with the next steps of the pattern. And that's just one of many ways to add beads to your knits. The small hook goes through the bead. The stitch goes on the end of the hook, and then you slide the bead over the yarn and over the stitch. So in this case, you have to have kind of a big hole on the bead. And again, you can see me struggling with this. It's not the easiest, especially when I have a chunky yarn on a tiny hook like this. This bead must have just had a smaller hole. There we go. Got it. I'm going to tighten up that stitch, yarn over, bind off that yarn over. Again, this is just what my instruction calls for in the pattern to give a little extra height to the beaded area. As you can see here, there's already a little lift up, and then continue with whatever the pattern instructions say. And just to show you, yeah, so here you can see, in addition to blocking it and this subtle chevron here, having that yarn over gives that stitch with the bead on it a little bit of extra height and wiggle room to kind of stay as you block it. Happy knitting!